Okay. All right. Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon, or sorry, good morning rather. And welcome to this Workforce Wednesday webinar. My name is Jalissa Jones with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. So I will be the moderator and technical support for today's webinar. And today's topic is Driven to Excel, Unlocking the Power of Student and Client Motivation. As a reminder, all participants of the webinar do not have the ability to unmute yourselves. If you have questions as the webinar proceeds, please post them in the chat box or the Q&A, and we will address them throughout and at the end of the webinar. We will pause for Q&A. A reminder, this webinar will be recorded. The presentation, recording, and any materials presented during today's meeting will be available on the Illinois Workforce Academy website within 48 hours of today's session, and I will put a link for today's presentation in the chat momentarily, excuse me. To be as accessible as possible, this webinar will be offering closed captioning, live transcriptions, so feel free to turn this on your Zoom toolbar. Tomorrow, each attendee will receive a follow-up email, which will include a survey asking you about today's webinar. Please provide feedback and any suggestions you have to help improve upcoming professional development efforts. I also have a set of polls. If you could please fill that out, I will be running those now. So it's just going to be 2 questions. Okay. Got a lot of Title I, a lot of Chicago. Yeah. Okay, great. I'll go ahead and end those polls and share the results so we can kind of see where we're at. As we can see, a lot of Title I, mainly Title I, and a lot of Chicago. All right. So, and with that, I will hand it over to our hosts.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm gonna get my screen ready here. There we go. Thanks, Jalissa, for the introduction and for the little warm up here. Glad you all are here today. We are talking about a topic that is, as they talk about hot topics, I think this is one of them, right? Which is how we keep our participants moving forward. Whether it's through our pushing them or them feeling motivated. We're trying to help them persist and move ahead to achieve their goals. So we are going to talk about how to unlock the power of motivating others today. And this is obviously not the answer to all of your problems. We're going to talk about some particular topics that you can start thinking about, and we're going to offer some suggestions. And then we would love to also hear from you in the chat, your own ideas. So please use that Zoom chat to communicate and let us know what you're thinking, and also to share your suggestions or questions. Okay. So my slides are not advancing right now, which is strange. So hold on one second. I'm gonna stop my share and try again. There we go. Okay, so in our session, here's our agenda for today. Our students—
Anita, sorry to excuse, but we're seeing your presenter screen.
Well, let's try this again. Don't you just love it? We just talked about tech problems.
Well, because we talked about it, we invited it into, there you go, perfect.
Thank you. We'll see if we can
Thanks for modeling your resilience and persistence.
That's right. So that is the first thing we're going to talk about is persistence.
I'm
Our
so sorry
capacity,
to
yeah,
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Somebody was saying that I just want to take a quick poll here. Is anybody else having an issue with the audio echoing? Is everybody able to hear Anita well? Okay,
okay.
perfect. Sorry. Thank you.
No problem, of course. All right, so we're going to talk about motivation as it relates to persistence, social and emotional well-being. We're going to talk about how we motivate people to learn content or skills. We're also going to talk about growth mindset development and then self-advocacy at the end. This is a lot, right? Again, we're not going to solve all of our problems with this content right now, but it is going to give us a lot to think about and spark hopefully a lot of suggestions and ideas from us. Okay. So let me start by introducing myself. As we said, I'm Anita Kerr. I work for the Southern Illinois Professional Development Center. This is part of the Illinois Adult Education Professional Development Network. So I'm a part of a team with Sarah Goldammer, Tara Schwab, Amber Fornacieri. We do professional development for adult educators. We also are connected to Title I and some of the other WIOA titles in that we do some training and partnership with them. So I've been in this world for a very long time, 25 years. I realized on the calendar not too long ago that I've been in adult education and I've been a teacher and a PD specialist for about 10 of those. So I've been around and seen a lot of students and worked with a lot of adults that I was trying to help move from one point to another on their journey. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about today is from my own personal experience and my own personal frustrations with not always being a very good motivator to the people that I worked with. So that's why we're going to collaboratively talk today, because I wish I had this all solved. I want to do better at motivating my students, which is why I have been researching this topic. So I also wanted to point out that I put a picture of myself on the screen mainly because this is, for me, my motivation. When I think about my professional life, what motivates me, there are lots of things that motivate me, but my kids are the real reason why I get up every day and want to work and do well. I want to provide for them, but I also want to be a good role model for them. So that's Anna and James, and they are what motivates me. So I would, of course, love to know what is motivating you. So think for a second. I will bet that there are some days when things are tough, when it's time to make a hard decision, or when you maybe don't even want to get out of bed. What is it that is motivating you professionally to continue in your work? Just add it to the chat for me. Maybe it's the desire to help your family. Maybe it's progress or promotion in your field. Maybe it's your personal faith. Maybe it's the need for validation. What is one thing that is a motivator for you in your professional life? So just drop in the chat as you're comfortable sharing. You don't have to give a picture like I did, but maybe just a quick comment would be great. Thank you. Yeah, Cassandra, that idea of wanting to be a good role model, I feel that as well. And setting an example for others. Yeah, and to contribute. Yes. Yeah, and Lauren, you're yes, I want to help people and I need to pay the bills, right? We're all motivated by that as well. Making an impact. Yeah. I love it. Contribute to transforming my students. So this is such a lovely thing. I appreciate you guys being willing to share. Sometimes when we get on a webinar, we just maybe are thinking, oh, what is this going to be? And then all of a sudden they're asking me to do personal reflection about kind of the way I feel about my life. That may seem a little deep, and it is, but I am really grateful for you sharing all of those motivators. It is very personal what we do in our work, and what motivates us can be very personal, and it can be very individual, right? And it's no different for our participants whom we're working with they also have very personal reasons for being there and working in our programs. So thank you for sharing all of those. It really does help to see people who are doing such good work in the trenches and maybe just sharing a little bit about why we're all here. So before we jump into kind of talking about our students and our clients' motivation, let's pause for just 1 minute and think about, we've reflected on our own motivation. Let's think about the broader context about motivation and why it matters. Motivating our participants matters because it does impact our program and agency performance and helps us meet our federal targets. To achieve the goals that our participants and our programs need to meet, we need people to stay, right? We need them to get going and enroll and come, and then we need them to commit and stay. And to do that, they have to find the motivation to persist in their chosen program. If they persist and succeed, then we achieve our federal WIOA outcomes, our targets related to assessment, credential completion, employment outcomes. All of those need to be met across all the WIOA title partners, right? And granted, we as teachers and employees, we have lots of reasons that we want our participants and our students to be motivated. And those we work with, as we said, we have their own reasons to be motivated too. And we should not forget those personal reasons. That's why we started with that. But this is the other thing we don't want to forget is that larger context, motivating our participants to persist and succeed. That does help our programs and it ultimately helps our funding. So in today's climate, meeting our targets is very important. So we don't want to forget this broader context. Now, one quick note as we go, as we jump into our content, I just want to say that I may occasionally use the word student out of habit from Title II Adult Ed, but I'm going to try to use students and clients or students and customers or just the word participants kind of broadly. And you can fill that in with the audience that you are serving when I use the word participant. So hopefully your brain will supply that little connector piece. Okay, so if motivation is this engine that's driving adults toward their success in their education, in their career goals, there are two different kinds of motivation. And I know you know this. External incentives such as prizes, certifications, tuition waivers, bus passes, all of those kinds of externals can spark engagement and motivation, but usually only if the participant also has something deeper, which is that intrinsic motivation, right? Generally, if the participant has both, that's something deeper, that intrinsic motivation that comes from their brain, their mind, and their heart, right? So here's a quick definition from the article titled Simply Psychology. They say that intrinsic motivation describes the undertaking of an activity for its inherent satisfaction, and it comes from within the individual, right? That's intrinsic. Extrinsic describes behavior that is driven by external rewards or punishments, things that are outside of the person, right? But I will say, and maybe you're thinking this too on your end, it's not always such a clear distinction between the external and the internal. Let me give you one example from some students of mine last year. Latrice was one of my students. She came to my online GED prep class needing to get her GED so she could keep her job in the school district where she was working. And then I had a young man named Devin, and he joined the GED class because he wanted to enter a nursing program that he was interested in starting. Both had extrinsic or external motivation to get that GED. In Latrice's case, it was retaining her job. In Devin's, it was to be able to start a program. But Devin's work in class was really spotty and half-hearted, and he dropped at the midterm. But Latrice is now a GED graduate and has a promotion at her school district job, not just retaining it, but she got a better job. So what was the difference? Well, guess what? Latrice had that external and intrinsic motivation. She was on fire and she used that to fuel her work in my class. So yes, they need both. And you may be thinking, well, I understand being able to give intrinsic motivation to my participants, but can we have an influence On those motivators that are more intrinsic, those internal drive factors, absolutely we can have influence on that. It might not be as easy as giving an attendance incentive or a certificate of completion, but it can be done. So we're going to look at the ways it can be done by looking at these different categories of motivation where we have influence. And the first one is persistence. So if you've got an issue or have had an issue in your job with getting people that you work with to persist, maybe you can just shoot a chat in the Zoom chat that says, yes, that's me. I always have that problem. Or maybe you'll be the unicorn and say, I don't have a problem with persistence, but I can tell you that in my field, this is a concern. Is getting people in is one issue. Getting them to stay is a secondary issue. And this is so crucial. If we cannot get our participants to stay and keep going, then they cannot achieve their ultimate goals. So persistence is key, and it's probably a struggle area for all of us. So what's the first component with persistence? What do we need to be doing? We need to help our students feel a measure of success and to be able to see their progress. But our participants often need motivation just to stay organized. Think about it for a second. In adult education, students have to log their attendance hours and keep track of their schedule. They have multiple account logins. They have their new email address. They have GED practice test scores. They're keeping track of their progress through their book or their online program. In your agency, maybe there's a lot of paperwork that has to be done. There are calendars that have to be balanced, personal responsibilities to juggle while pursuing a workforce training program, for instance. All of these things happening for our participants when they first get started can be very overwhelming. So how can we teach our participants some practical organizational skills to help them be able to tackle those to-do tasks and be able to see their progress along the way? Well, one trick is to start talking about goal setting very early on when you're interacting with your participants. For students, start identifying with them. What subjects do you want to tackle first in class? By what date would you like to have your first GED subject test passed? What's your target date for graduation and why? For your clients, do they know the individual steps that are required to obtain their ultimate goal? In other words, they know where they want to end up, but do they know what some of those little pieces and steps along the way are going to require? Do they have a reasonable timeline to achieve their ultimate goal with you? That's a problem sometimes also, right? Is people have an unrealistic picture of how long it will take them. So think about a notes page, a saved document where people can start keeping track of all of their logins, their passwords. Maybe you need to have a backup copy of that as well. Agency employees, do your clients have a logical, organized way to store information that you're giving to them regarding the program they're entering? Do they have a plan to communicate with you going forward? Meaning, do they know when they leave maybe one phone call with you, what the next step is in that communication plan? These are just some of those tricks and tips about helping them stay organized, because if our participants feel scattered, disorganized, unfocused, all of that can contribute to them feeling unmotivated to persist. So if you may think, I'm not sure how this connects, that's it. Overwhelm means I don't feel motivated to move ahead. So we want to keep them from feeling overwhelmed. Here's another thing that I wonder if you have experienced in your world. We have to motivate our students and our participants past their failures. We've got to motivate them to stay around past their failures. Adults need this motivation to hang in there with their classwork, with their program, even when the work is hard, even when life presents challenges. One major component of persistence is learning to accept failure as part of the learning process. It's not just failure and then that's it. I have to give up, right? Failure is, I like this little pink bubble in the middle, the first attempt in learning. You see that FAIL? These are nice little ideas that we can maybe present to our participants, present to our students to remind them that failure does not mean the end. In fact, we need to talk to them about failing forward, A couple of staff members and I were just talking about this before this call about how when you make a mistake or something goes wrong, you don't quit and give up. You say, wait a minute, what did I learn from that? Because I'm going to do it differently next time. That's what failing forward means. We learn, we use the failure to learn from it, and then we move forward, right? Maybe you have had personal experience where this has been true for you. You've learned more from the failure than you actually learned from the achievement itself, ultimately. Here's a lovely quote from a Links course on persistence with adult learners. They said, when you correct an error, your brain is constructing new wiring to lead you to make a better choice next time. Making a mistake can actually benefit you if you persist and figure out what went wrong and learn from it. I love this quote. It's very encouraging for all of us as just workers, right? As people who live in the world, that we can make a mistake and we're actually learning from it. That's beneficial to us. I wonder how many of you think to your participants, to your students, they need to hear that too, right? Because failure does not mean stopping. We fail forward by learning from it. It can actually be good for our brains. So I keep a little memento of this in my office that a friend made me. You see that little blue F? That's a little wooden carving of that F. We think of F for failure, right? That's what we're associated with in our brains. But notice the little forward arrows on the front of the F. I'm failing forward every time I make a mistake if I keep going. So maybe that failing forward image is something that you could draw on the board in your classroom, or you could make a little image through AI and print it out and post it on your wall. And then when people ask about it, what's that F with the arrows? You can explain what failing forward really is. Sometimes it's small things like that when we communicate with our participants and give them those little there's just those little tidbits of information that can be encouraging to them. Or maybe you're the one that needed that encouragement today, and that would be fine too. So, as we help our participants persist beyond their failure, I wanted to share something I heard from the author Mel Robbins. You may have heard of her. She's been very popular recently because of this book she wrote called Let Them. If you've not heard of Let Them by Mel Robbins, you might want to look it up. She also has a podcast and she has a lot of different ideas that are floating out there. I heard her speaking on a podcast I listened to called Smartless, and this was earlier in this year. And she said this sentence that really stuck with me. She said, remaking your life isn't glamorous, it's grueling. And I thought, yes, it is. When you try to do something really new and hard, it isn't glamorous like it is in the movies. It's tough. That means that students going back to school to finish their high school diploma or learn English, your clients getting retrained for a new career, they're doing something really hard to remake their life, and it will not be easy or glamorous. It takes a lot of work. And we should tell our participants that. And we should also tell them it's okay when it doesn't go perfectly, because nothing that's grueling is going to go perfectly, right? I wonder how many of you that this rings true. Maybe there's somebody in your mind that you're thinking of that you've worked with who needed to hear this, that remaking their life is tough. She also shared, Mel Robbins shared this sentiment, which I really liked, which was, don't wait until you feel ready. She said, take the first step to make yourself ready. She has this lovely concept that she calls the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown. And it has to do with this, that if you wait until you feel ready, you will never feel ready, especially if it's something around which you suffer a lot of anxiety or a lot of worry, that you have to just take a first step. So I want to explain what this concept is. If you're interested and you want to look it up, I put on here the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, then take action. That's her, Mel Robbins, speaking on Oprah's podcast on May the 6th of this past year, 2025. She talks about how when we are needing to make a change, when we're needing to do something hard, the first thing we do is we sit and think about it. And when we sit and think, that's when anxiety comes in, that's when worry comes in, that's when procrastination comes in, and then we end up not taking the action because we've talked ourselves out of it. So she talks about how she was in a really low place in her life. And at one point, she saw a rocket ship take off on a commercial she was watching on TV. And she decided, you know what? The next morning, instead of hitting the snooze 8 times and making my kids late for school and me not wanting to get up, as soon as the alarm goes off, I'm going to count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to jump out of bed like a rocket ship and I'm going to take my first step of the day. And she did. And she talks about how that changed her life. And so I encourage you, the slides are going to be available to you on the WeOA Wednesday website after this. And I would recommend that this is one of those things you might want to click on and watch. It's really great. And I just think about our participants, how many of them get in a spiral in their brain about their thoughts that make them anxious, and it slows them down and keeps them from taking action. It may be big things in their life that they're delaying, and it might be just the small things like getting out of bed when the alarm goes off. So maybe this is a concept that you can incorporate into your discussion and your talk with your participants. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, then act. And don't let your brain take over and start the anxiety cycle. So I hope that that's meaningful and maybe will be something that you could embed into some of your instruction with your participants. So persistence. Okay, we know it's a problem. Let's talk about another one that's a big issue when we're talking about helping motivate our participants, and that is social and emotional well-being, motivating them in some ways to make them ready to participate, ready to be involved in the programs that we're offering to them. This may seem like a big task, helping people be better human beings. But as my boss, Sarah, always says, we don't teach content, we don't teach things, we teach people. And this is some degree of social and emotional well-being in our students and in our clients is absolutely going to be necessary for them to be in the correct headspace, for them to learn content, to learn facts, to learn skills, and then move ahead with their goals in life. So obviously, our primary job is either to help our students learn material or help our clients advance toward their goals. That's all true. But as you well know, we're also helping our students and our clients develop into functioning people, and that's part of our job. So how do we motivate them to grow as people? So you've probably heard of social emotional learning, or SEL. This is really not a new concept, the social emotional learning. It's kind of basically what we used to call soft skills, what employers are looking for when they hire. They want decent humans, right? So can your students, can your clients communicate effectively? Can they control their impulses, control their temper? Can they problem solve? These are all social emotional learning skills or soft skills. And modeling those types of skills to our participants is great, but it will probably take more direct instruction to make an impact on them. Telling them directly, I'm asking you to do this because it will help teach you how to be successful in the workplace. That's drawing the line for them and helping them understand. So these are just a couple of examples of how you might teach social and emotional learning in an adult ed classroom, or how you might incorporate them into your case management work. One that I really like out of these is this third bullet, to use scenarios and open-ended questions to help them predict, plan, and troubleshoot. Really like this idea. We, instead of everything being a yes or a no, help them with open-ended scenarios and open-ended questions. So let's talk about what that might look like a little bit. So this is such a useful strategy, open-ended questions, but it's a relatively easy one. So if you're thinking, man, I just need to take away one quick thing from this webinar I want to try next week, this could be one of them, this open-ended question strategy. Think about, first of all, the characteristics of what we call closed questions, right? So this would be brief, factual answers, yes or no, one-word replies, right? Those are what we call closed questions. Those serve to gather information, yes, but they don't serve to develop a relationship with somebody or to gain deeper knowledge from them. The other thing that closed questions do, and this was an interesting fact to me, it always takes the conversation in the direction that the asker is trying to go. Think about that for a second. When you're asking closed-ended questions, the conversation is always going the way you are trying to take it. It doesn't allow the participant who's being questioned to steer the conversation or really contribute in ways that matter to them. So let's figure out ways to let people elaborate a little bit and really share what's on their minds. So if we want these open-ended questions, we really need to learn how to do it, and that'll help us learn more about our participants, help them develop a better understanding of themselves even. And when we use this communication strategy, the other thing we're doing is modeling for our participants the way they should be interacting with others in their work and in their personal lives. So what does it look like? So here's an example. This is material borrowed from a presentation on from WIOA recently that was done on motivational interviewing by Jody Sue Kelly. And it has the opportunity to move from a closed question to a sort of more open question to an example of some really open questions. So asking someone, are you currently in training, high school, or getting your GED? That is a yes or no question, right? But if we ask someone, well, what are your current plans for your education? That is much more of an open question. But notice what the open examples are. Tell me about your education from high school to today. How do you feel about getting more education or getting some skill training? What advantages would continuing your education have for you? Look at how different those three bottom questions are from the top question. That's what we want to be doing as professionals, is getting in the habit of asking more open questions. I want you to be thinking right now of something that you do on a regular basis in your job that you are asked a closed question. I'm going to put that in your head right now because I'm going to give you another example. And I want you to be thinking of one that you use in your work. Here's a closed question, another example from the Jody Sue Kelly training. Have you ever worked before? That's a good question. You need to know the information if you're putting together a management plan for someone, right? Have you ever worked before? Yes or no? But look at the difference in those open questions at the bottom. Tell me about some jobs you've held and what you learned in those jobs. Tell me about your work history. I'm interested in what you did, how long you worked, what made you decide to leave. That's a very interesting topic. Or if someone hasn't worked before, what kind of jobs come to mind when you dream about a job you would like? What would you enjoy doing? And when you think about your work history, which jobs would you be willing to do again and which ones would you not want to do again and why? Notice the difference between the closed and open questions, right? There's a big, big difference. So I would love it if you would think for a second of one closed question that you have to ask on a regular basis in your work. Take a couple of seconds and try to turn that question into an open-ended question. We're going to pause for just a second and let you think. I would love it if somebody wants to put that in the chat. Maybe their closed question followed by their revised open-ended. We'll give you a couple of seconds to think, and then we would love to see some of those in the chat. What's a closed question you ask, and can you turn it into an open question? Perfect. I love this first one. The closed question is, do you need training? Right? That's a yes or no question, and it's an information you need. But listen to the difference. What training would you like to receive? Right? That lets the person being questioned have some input. I love that. Thank you. If anybody else wants to drop their closed versus open question in the chat, that would be great. We'd love to see some examples. I've given you a couple, but it's great to think about the ones that you use in your own personal life. Oh, I love that, Cassandra. Do you have children? Versus tell me about your kids if you have any, right? That's more open. Oh, Elizabeth, I use the why question in my GED class too. Asking students to think about their why. Why are you here? Why is this important to you? I love that. I used the my why writing assignment kind of early on in my class too. Oh yeah. Yeah, like asking somebody, so how did it go versus what are your views about that, right? Asking for your views is much more open, right? It's opening up a larger conversation. Oh, thank you guys. I love that. Yeah, this is a great opportunity for us to think. Again, we don't want to police ourselves like every word that comes out of our mouth. We're not thinking, I have to be motivating. I have to be motivating. What we want to do is start taking on some habits and some new language, maybe, and some new perspectives that will kind of impact all the things that we do with our participants. And this is just one of them. I need to start thinking about ways I can ask more open questions to get better conversation with my participant. It's fantastic. Thank you for being willing to do that. Here's another topic that I want to touch on very quickly because I don't want to sit on negative, but another thing we really have to motivate our participants through is motivating them to overcome the negativity that surrounds them. I will bet that you have had students or clients who were surrounded by things like negative past school experiences, negative past work environments, negative people around them, and possibly and sadly their own inner thoughts, their own negative self-talk, right? We have people like this in our work worlds. I do too. Now, we cannot erase the pasts that our participants have had, nor should we try to. But we can try to lay down a new foundation of positivity that then they can start building on, right? Start a new path, help them think some new thoughts, create some micro doses of positivity, as my colleague Amber calls it. I have one example of this that I want to share with you as you're thinking about your own participants and the negativity that surrounds them. I had a student a couple of years ago named Chastity. She sent me a text message one day that said, a family member just told me that I cannot do this. I cannot pass my GED. And I don't want to go take my final test now. I'm so discouraged. And I will tell you, obviously, I was very angry when I saw that text from her. I was angry on her behalf. And it took a lot of coaching and talking between us. And I encouraged her to talk to other people in her life who were more positive. It took her 6 months before she worked up the courage to actually go take her final GED test. And she passed. And she is a graduate right now to this day. But that was in a great deal owing to her own inner resources and strength. And it took some encouragement from me and from some other people she knew to know that she really could overcome that negativity she was hearing. So just be thinking maybe about the people who you work with. What are some of the negative things that they have in their minds as they approach you, whether it's to come back to school or to try to get retrained and enter a new program? What are they bringing with them? And what do we maybe need to counter with some positivity? Again, we're not trying to erase what they've gone through, but we can start building on some new positivity. So maybe you can think about some areas that you could incorporate some positivity into our participants' thinking. I also want to say before we get away from this social emotional learning piece that adults motivate each other. This is probably the most powerful version of motivation that I have seen in my time working with adult learners. I can spin my wheels to try to do everything motivating I can think of, but honestly, what works best is for them to motivate each other. That works better than anything else I've ever been able to come up with. Research tells us that adult education students who form social bonds and create a community in their classrooms, that is one of the primary factors in their persistence. So taking time to create opportunities to build community is not a waste of time, you teachers out there. It is directly research-based and it's motivating our students to persist. For those of you who are not in a classroom, be thinking about ways that you can help build a sense of community, a sense of connection for one person to feel connected to another, whether it's you to the client or some other capacity for letting them motivate each other. This picture you're looking at is my most recent success story of students motivating each other. I had a Tuesday night Zoom class. I never met any of these people in person until this night at graduation. That was the first time I laid eyes on any of them in person. On this Zoom, these four women were working towards their GED and they were motivating each other. Their phrase that they came up with was, "You've got this, you've got this." And anytime somebody was talking about a struggle they were having with their personal life or with their class work, "You've got this." And they encouraged each other. And three out of the four of them successfully completed their GED before graduation and showed up at Lincoln Land Community College thrilled and in their gown. Courtney, who's in the middle right there, she missed it by 2 points on her final GED subtest and she didn't pass and she couldn't walk the stage at graduation. And you know what she did? She came to graduation. She brought flowers for all three of those women who had been her friends in the Zoom, and she stood up and cheered for them when they walked across the stage. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen and the most selfless thing I had ever seen. And the only reason that Courtney was able to do that was because they had created a bond together. And you should have heard those three graduates talk to her that night about, you've got this. I can't wait for you to graduate next year. And Courtney is still in my class this year and she's still working and she's going to finish. But I just feel like this is one of those things that you cannot discount the value of human connection. And that is what motivates people when they feel like they know somebody and somebody cares about them. And maybe it's you. Maybe you're the person that is building community with someone, or maybe it's people in their other social circle within your agency or your program. But don't discount that. It is absolutely valuable. Think about the ways that you might be able to have opportunities for building community, for motivating each other, for getting to know people and making those bonds. I just give that to you as a challenge, maybe. If you haven't had really a lot of opportunities for that, I hope you will in the future. Okay, so we're going to go through category 3 a little quickly because we're going to be talking about how we have to motivate our participants to learn things, right? For teachers, this is obvious. For those of you who are working with your clients, they have things they've got to be doing and learning. And how do we keep them moving forward and motivating? Well, here is our first concept. This is mostly for you teachers, but I also want to say this is really true for all of us, is we've got to motivate them to keep reading, to keep plugging forward. Sometimes we forget that so many of us were raised to read on a paper book, and now everything is on a screen. And a lot of times, even when people are studying for a GED test, or maybe they're just trying to fill out an online application, they're just struggling with either the persistence to keep going through the digital skills or through their reading skills. Maybe you've heard a news story like this one here that I screenshot for you about shrinking attention spans. There are so many different versions of this information floating out there. I just chose one to highlight. This is from the University of California. It's a study that was called "Can't Pay Attention? You're Not Alone." And it said that our attention spans are shrinking fast. Apparently, the average person's attention span for a single screen in 2023 is 47 seconds. I'm going to say that one more time. In 2023, the average person's attention span for a single screen is 47 seconds. And that is down from 2.5 minutes in 2004. So over time, we're losing the ability to stay focused on things that are on a screen in front of us. So we need to help build our participants' endurance when they're reading long passages, when they're filling out documents. Just like you can't run a marathon without training, people cannot be expected to read long text passages without practicing that skill. So teachers, if you have been giving students mostly book information, balance it out with some screen reading so that you can get them used to it. Those of you who are working with clients, maybe not absorbing information as well, if it's kind of long, dense text on the screen, we've got to consider all of the reasons why that might be challenging and maybe offer some help. Think about it for a second. When you're reading on a screen, there's no visible cue of those diminishing pages as I flip the pages of my book, right? I can't annotate as easily. I can't go back and find that thing that I saw so easily because I'm scrolling, right? we have to give people practice in doing this and giving them some grace when we're asking them to fill out online forms and things if they've not really had much experience doing that. So that is one idea that I want to present to you. Here's another. This is one of the most exciting things that I learned as I was researching this motivation topic. I hope you'll find this exciting too. That adults need motivation to get comfortable in what's called the learning space. You see this little squiggly line drawing over here on the right where it says not knowing, squiggle, 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 knowing. This is the idea that students have to get comfortable staying in that space before they actually know a thing or before they actually achieve a thing. They cannot give up when they're in the middle of that squiggle. They've got to stay motivated to keep going. And what does that look like? Well, it looks like frustration when you're in the learning space. Frustration, it literally means that you're sitting in the learning space because you're not there yet. We're going to listen to a tiny piece of Dr. Becky Kennedy speaking in front of a classroom at Duke University. Here are her thoughts. And I hope as you listen to this, you will think about how this message, you might use it to encourage your students or your clients.
Actually, that's a good question. What does resilience feel like?
I think the word resilience has a positive connotation, but when you're being resilient, it definitely does not feel positive.
I think that's so beautiful. Being resilient doesn't feel resilient at all. It feels so messy.
Another way of thinking about it is we also have not knowing and knowing.
The space between not knowing something and knowing something is really painful, especially if you've fashioned yourself to be someone who's academically talented, because then it almost feels like your academic success or your identity as a smart person is tied to knowing.
When you're in the space of that,
It's really easy to want to exit something.
so this has a name in my mind, right? It's called the learning space. This is actually what learning, no matter what you're learning, something on the job, something from puzzles, learning to read,
You don't know how to do it, you want to know how to do it. And what I think is really empowering to know is the learning space has one feeling associated with it: frustration. That's literally how learning feels. And if you think about that, then frustration becomes this actually like almost amazing thing you can learn to love, even though it's painful, because you're like, this is actually a sign that I'm learning. Whenever you're frustrated, it literally means you're somewhere in the learning space. And why frustration tolerance is so important is because people think that resilience and success comes from getting to knowing as soon as possible. They're wrong. Resilience and success comes from the length of time you can just tolerate being in this space. The longer you can tolerate being here, the more you will ride this, and the more you'll eventually come here.
Okay. So remember, you're going to have the slides. You can have that video link. How do you feel about tolerating the learning space? Did what Dr. Becky said make sense to you? Did it resonate with you in something you've tried to experience with learning? Is there someone that you've worked with that you think, oh, they need to hear that message? Maybe there's something that you're thinking right away, I could use that messaging with a participant of mine. I really like that video. And again, it's like a minute and a half. And so anybody probably could use it in their work life with their participants in some ways. Oh yeah, and Monica even says a coworker that she's thinking of could benefit. Love that. Yeah, it could be anybody that you have in your life. Or again, it could be us, right? We're learning to tolerate the learning space. We often talk on our team about when we are learning something new, it's like frustrates our brain. My friend Sarah and I, we were just driving somewhere and we had a rental car. And so everything, all the controls in the car were different than her normal car. So as we were going, it was like having to rethink a little bit about everything. And that's just one example of thousands that we encounter on a monthly basis where we have to learn something new. And again, our participants with whom we work may be more likely to drop out and stop in the middle of that learning space because of frustration. And it's our job to help them recognize, no, you're still learning right now. That's why it's frustrating. Stick with it. Stay with the program. Keep going forward. Yeah, Elizabeth, the link is absolutely in the slide deck. But if I think about it before we jump off, I'll drop it in the chat too. Yeah, I love this. So hopefully that's something that you can take away and use in your workspace or in your personal life too. Okay, next big section, growth mindset development. Now, I would bet money that some of you already know what growth mindset is. So we're going to go a little quickly through the definitions. But again, you'll have the slides and you can go back and look at it if you need some extra. Adults need motivation to develop a growth mindset. They're not going to have it automatically, most likely. You may be familiar with Carol Dweck and her theory of growth mindset. Here's the definition. Individuals with a fixed mindset believe that their qualities, like their intelligence or their personality, are fixed. They're set in stone. How God made you is how you are. Like, that's their belief. One's traits are fixed, not something that can be practiced or developed. Individuals with a growth mindset, though, believe that effort, training, work can change your qualities and your traits, that you can grow, that you can get better. Individuals with a fixed mindset do not believe that their success depends on their effort to learn. They believe that success depends on the level of their innate ability. Therefore, they dread failure because it suggests constraints, limits. I'm not going to be able to overcome this. But growth mindset folks are confident that after some effort, they will be able to learn the skill, have the knowledge, and then improve their performance. So if we know what it looks like for a student or a client to have a fixed or growth mindset, how can we take real steps to help them move from the bad one to the good one, right? How do we help them develop a growth mindset? Well, one way is that we have to develop and change some of the language that we use so that when we talk and think, that we are also demonstrating growth mindset. We need to model growth mindset language for them and then coach them toward using it with themselves. So here are a couple of examples. Fixed mindset, growth mindset. I want you to see some of the things that somebody might be self-talk going through their brains for both. I'm not good at it. I'm good at it or I'm not good at it, right? There's just black or white, one or the other. I don't like to be challenged. Feedback is all personal. When I'm frustrated, I give up and I stick to what I know. Fixed mindset. But look over here at the growth mindset. Failure means opportunity to grow. I learned something. I can learn to do anything I want. Feedback is just constructive. It's helping me. And I like to try new things. Look at that. What a lovely picture of what might be going on in your client's mind. And we need to be able to start moving them towards the growth mindset. So you may be thinking, I don't know, how could we do that? Well, one way, again, is to think about the language that we are using inside our own minds and coming out our mouth and the language that they're using. We have to build new thought patterns and new speech patterns in order to help have a growth mindset. So eventually we want our students to be thinking that way. So we can foster growth mindset by focusing on process over product. This is a key idea, right? Helping them understand that the mistakes are just part of the learning process. It's okay to make mistakes in the process. It doesn't have to be a perfect product the first time, right? We won't help learners, though, by glossing over their errors. We're not saying everything's great, you got 100%. No, it's okay. Errors become learning opportunities. So we need to point things out when there are things that need to be corrected, and we can do it with grace. And we provide clear, specific, accurate feedback when we do give them error feedback so that they have a realistic assessment of how they're doing. I asked my son the other day, we were taking a walk when he was home on spring break. He's a freshman at college. And I asked him, I said, hey, what motivates you when you're in school as a freshman in college? And you know what he said? I was shocked by this because I thought I knew my son pretty well and I thought I knew what he was going to say. What motivates you in school? And he said, having really clear timelines, expectations, and feedback from his teachers helps him to know where he is, where he's going, and that motivates him to keep moving forward and knowing that he's in the right direction. I could not believe that. It's exactly what I was told by the research And I got that answer from him unprompted. I was shocked. He also did tell me that when they provide candy in class, that also helps him. But I didn't think that one was quite as much of a research base as just a fact that he's a 19-year-old college student. And though this slide is directed a little bit towards teacher students, several of these ideas can be related to those of you working with workforce clients as well. There are speed bumps along the way for your clients. How can we help them develop resilience and growth mindset as they're moving through the system through different points? So here's a little challenge for us. When the adults in your world, your participants, are using negative self-talk, fixed mindset talk, we can intervene by giving feedback that uses growth mindset language. So I'm going to make you try this, okay? Here are some things that a student or a client might say to you. This is too hard for me. I'm not good at this. I got it all wrong. These are fixed mindset kinds of thoughts. But we need to be able to reinforce to them that mistakes and challenge are part of learning, and success just takes some time and effort. So we have to think about the language that we can alter when we talk to them to encourage them to change that inner dialogue. So when students or clients say what's on the left, what should we say in response? So I would love if you would, in the chat, pick number 1, 2, or 3 and put the number, and then put what you would say in response to that that tries to use some growth mindset language. No right or wrong answer here, but if you heard number 1, 2, or 3 from somebody in your work world, what might you say back to them to encourage growth mindset? Give you a few seconds to think, and then again, I'd love to see a 1, 2, or a 3 and your growth mindset response that you might use. Oh, I love these. This is so encouraging, you guys. I don't even have to flip the little orange box to reveal my answers because yours are all better than mine. I just love this. I love, Keontae says, of course it's hard because it's worth it. Love it. Oh, and Natalia, it's hard for everyone, not just you. I love that. It puts them in that sense of community, right? You're not the only one struggling with this. Yeah. Oh, and Brandy, you've got the key growth mindset word. You're not good at this yet, but keep trying. Yet is the growth mindset magic word. I don't know this yet. I'm not good at this yet. That is growth mindset. Elizabeth, learning's like building a house. You got to do it one brick at a time. Oh, you guys, if reading through those through the chat doesn't just make you a little bit excited, you might be a little bit asleep today because that is just lovely. It's such an encouragement to see our brains are moving towards growth mindset, maybe naturally, because we're helpers and we're go-getters and we want to bring our participants along. But if we just think about using that language intentionally, often and all the time, then we're going to be modeling for our participants. And guess what? Eventually, that kind of framework of growth mindset will start to rub off on them a little bit, we hope. That is the goal. And they'll start mimicking that language that we use. They'll start using it as well. Perfect. Couldn't have asked for for anything better. You guys were perfect. And that leads us to our last category. And I will say this is a thing that I have been struggling with in my own personal professional work. is helping my students actually get to the end and complete. For whatever reason, I am just seeing all kinds of GED students stalling out and not wanting to go take their last test, or not wanting to actually schedule the test when they already have a passing practice test. And that sense of fear. And I just don't want to take another step because I'm afraid I'm going to fail. Maybe you're seeing that in your work world too. And so I started doing a little research and figuring out what is going on. We have got to help our students be able to have the courage to complete and to advocate for themselves. So that's what I want to talk about right now. I was on a webinar back in May by Essential Education, which is a publisher, and they were doing a webinar on mental health. And I want to just tell you one of the things they said on that webinar. They said adult learning needs, so this would be any adults in any capacity where they're having to learn, start a program, etc. Their needs are interrelated to emotional and psychological needs. So our learning needs are related to our emotional and psychological needs. A cycle of struggle that somebody has been in can impact their engagement. It can impact their relationships. It can impact their success. And adult students exhibit lower rates of self-advocacy when they have suffered stigma, shame, and negative prior experiences. So, yes, this makes sense to us. This is true that when students go through things that are really damaging to themselves and really hard, yes, they probably are less likely to stand up and advocate for themselves. But that's where we come in. We are motivating them to become self-advocates for them as they need to be, even when it's hard for them. So how can we help with this? So here's the first thing, which is to advocate. What does it even mean? Well, this is the dictionary definition that I pulled. It says to add a voice of support to another person. That's what it means to advocate. I'm adding my voice to somebody else's to help support them. Look at what it means to self-advocate. It means use your own voice to support yourself. I just loved that contrast. It's so simple and easy to understand, and I think easy to explain to a student or to a client. When we talk about self-advocacy, it kind of gets mixed up with like political advocacy in their brain, or what are we talking about? Do I have to go march with a sign? No, advocacy, self-advocacy is using your own voice to support your own needs. What do I need in this moment? That's all it is. And I really like how simply this was broken down. So I offer that to you as an option of a way to explain this. And here's the thing. Our participants may have never done this before. Use their own voice to advocate for themselves in a public setting. They may have never done it. For instance, it's okay to take a day off work when you're scheduled to take your GED test. You may have to go to your boss, tell them why you need the day off, and ask for it. And if they've never done that, we might have to model some of that language for them. Or it's okay to prioritize their new training program or their new job by asking a relative to help out with childcare. But we may have to suggest to them that they do that or that they have the language to do that. So consider for a second how you may need to build some self-advocacy skills into your classroom culture or to your case management, your work with your clients. Where can you slide that idea of self-advocacy in and include it? If you're not already, and if you are, good for you, because it's such an important concept. Here's a really subtle but important difference. When we're talking about helping students be motivated to complete or helping push them towards the end, I borrowed this also from Jody Sue Kelly from the motivational interviewing training. Let's distinguish really quick between praise and affirmation. Praise is like expressing your approval or complimenting someone for something they've done. It's very one-directional. It's usually kind of surface level judgment. When someone compliments you, they're letting you know how they feel about you. So it contains I, right? I am so pleased with you, etc. It's personal judgment. But you might say, oh, I think you're so smart, or I'm so proud of you. Both of those reflect the giver's standards, right? You have to work to get my approval is kind of the inference. But look at affirmations. These reflect positive feedback about the person's strength or the person's efforts. It's noticing and pointing out a strength you see or a specific behavior that you see are moving them ahead. The goal is to enhance the person's self-esteem and highlight their own abilities. So we highlight their competence, accentuate their position, their strength, their efforts. A little bit of a difference there. So what could that look like in our language? Again, thinking about how we talk to people. Look at the ones on the left. There's the praise examples. I'm proud of you. I liked the way you did that. I couldn't be happier for you. These all sound positive, and you guys, there's nothing wrong with that. Just look at what happens though on the other side. First of all, notice all the I's went away, and now it's you, your, you. You see that? You worked hard. Your creativity did this. You handled that situation well because you must be pleased with yourself. This is, again, it seems like a subtle difference, but again, it has to do with the language that we use and our intentionality when we talk to our participants. If you find yourself saying I a lot, maybe just pause it and think, can I change that into a you statement? You probably can. You did great, and here's why I noticed. Here's why I noticed what you did. And just give them the explanation. Oh, and Candace says, I love to affirm clients. That makes me so happy because if you naturally do this, oh, good for you. I really admire people who do this naturally. It's part of their personality. For those of us for whom this might be a little less natural, we might have to think about it a little more and kind of frame our language a little bit. And so wherever you fall on that scale, maybe this is something to strive for. Yeah, it's so empowering to be told affirmations. Now, here's this idea about students and clients maybe having trouble getting to that culmination point, getting to the completion point. Maybe you've had students or clients who've been around a while who just can't seem to get over the final hurdle and finish. I told you about my students where maybe they're just struggling to sign up for that final GED test. They have to be kind of gently pushed sometimes in that way. Maybe students want to stay in their current class level because they really love the teacher and they feel really comfortable there. And we have to motivate them towards success to take the next step into a more challenging class. Maybe it's helping a client say, you know what, you absolutely are able to and eligible for this program. What's scaring you away from it? Why aren't you signing up? Why aren't you committing? And getting them to talk a little bit about those fears. I've taken to reviewing my records in my class every week or two and choosing at least 2 students who need to be motivated forward in some way to complete. This is something I've been doing. So I've just been scanning my roster and thinking, oh, yep, she took a practice test, but she never signed up for her real GED yet, or something like that. And I email or text them immediately and encourage them to pick a date and do it. Now, does it always work? No, but I'm doing my part to offer them that motivation that they need to help get over that final hurdle and take their step. And I am sure that in the workforce world, you all have something similar where you're thinking, yeah, I've got some clients who need a little nudge. Maybe think about what you need to do to help them overcome their hesitation to take that final leap. The last thing I want to say about this motivating to complete is part of that is helping motivate our clients and our students to actually celebrate when they do complete. I don't know about you, but I have noticed that a lot of my students are just busy. They're kind of down on themselves. They're not used to getting an attaboy or a pat on the shoulder from anybody. And they actually tend to skip right over the happy part, the really important part of marking their successes and pausing to celebrate themselves. Here's an example from one of my GED students last semester. I want you to read from the bottom up. Courtney, I passed with a score of 152. That's it. And I replied, where are your explanation points in that message? That is amazing. I'm so proud of you. Math test, here you come. Right? And then look what she replied back to me a couple minutes later. She laughs, says, hi, I didn't even realize I didn't put them. Thank you so much. Exclamation points, smiley face, math, here I come. That is an example of somebody who she did not naturally celebrate her own success, I had to give her a little bit of permission and reminder, you should be celebrating yourself. And as soon as she realized that, yeah, she knows how to celebrate herself and say, I did it, but she didn't do it naturally. She needed some help. So that's the kind of thing that I would encourage you to be thinking about with your participants. Where do they need a little attaboy? They need a little bit of you did it. And let them pause and celebrate for themselves a bit. I have started taking 1 minute with a student who shares good news with me of any kind, and I ask them if they've celebrated themselves yet. Have you told anybody? Did you talk to a friend or a loved one? Did you buy yourself a coffee or get a little dessert to celebrate? They deserve to celebrate themselves for just a minute, and we just don't want them to skip over that part. So I encourage you to be thinking about that as you are working with your clients and your students. Where do you need to help them celebrate? Maybe if something's coming to your mind right now, just drop it in the chat. I just use a lot of texts and a lot of emails and the communication that we're using. And I always say, how are you celebrating this? Who have you told? Maybe you have another idea. Oh, and Lucas, yeah. I love this, the connector piece of catch them doing it right when you can praise them for doing something when it's not really like a big, oh, I got this passing grade on a test. You're randomly catching them doing something well. I love that. Oh, and Cindy, what a fantastic suggestion. This whole concept of celebrating themselves has to come out in the idea of job seekers, right? Resume, cover letter, interview skills. I have to be able to say, I do well at this. I have to lift myself up a little bit. That's exactly the attitude we need to foster so we can be doing it along the way with them, not just when we're teaching them the resume skills or the interview. Oh, fantastic. You guys are terrific. All right, so I'm going to ask you, we're going to wrap up here in a minute, but I just want to ask you to think about a takeaway from this session. What do you want to remember? I fully recognize that when I give you 5 categories of motivation and I give you examples and videos and slides, and there's a lot in there, and you'll have the slides afterwards, and you can go back and look if you want. But if you're just going to walk away and take one thing today, what would you like that key takeaway to be today that you're going to remember and use? I'll give you a little prompt. Here's a couple of motivation strategies that we talked about today. Which one maybe interests you the most? Maybe that idea about helping people fail forward. Don't stop when you fail, but learn from it and go. Changing their negative thoughts. Building community. Remember the picture of my students and Courtney being there to cheer them on? Maybe that is an idea you're going to take away. Growth mindset language. You don't know how to do that yet. Tolerating the learning space with Dr. Becky's video, or maybe the self-advocacy or helping them celebrate. Oh, I love it. Everybody's kind of taking away a different one, which I think is fantastic. Everybody is coming here today with their mind wrapped around their work right now and their participants. So take away the thing that you think is going to be most impactful for your people. Yeah, I love that. Makes me so glad. Now, you can't be a teacher and not say, okay, so what are you going to do? I asked you what was the most meaningful, the one you want to remember, and you just told me. So now I'm going to challenge you. What kind of motivation do you think is most necessary for your students? And I gave you 2 ideas, could you apply in the next week or so and make a plan? So you've kind of walked away with your major key takeaway, but can you push it one step further and say, my clients need this right now, and I'm going to try this next week. That would be your takeaway goal as you stop and reflect. That's not to be shared. That's just something you can jot down on a Post-it and stick it on your computer. And maybe when you're back here on Monday, oh, I remember that, and I'm going to use that with clients this week, or I'm going to use that in my class this week. That's the goal. Oh, Jackie says, when I get the slide deck, I want to post some of these things on my bulletin board so clients can see it. I love that idea. Again, the idea of just putting things around you in your workspace and then talking about them as you're talking with your clients or your participants is lovely. Oh, Elizabeth says she's going to add the learning space illustration to the orientation session. That's a great idea to help talk about persistence. Fantastic. Well, I could not be happier to have spent time with you guys today. This is my email address. You're more than welcome to reach out if you have questions or want to just have a chat about motivation. I'm happy to be a part of the Adult Education Professional Development Network that serves you. And if we can do anything for you, you let us know. But I hope that you have fun going forward. I really mean that. It can be fun to be a motivator. It doesn't always have to be spinning our wheels in the dirt and not moving forward. Let's just pick a couple of ways we want to motivate the people around us and start trying them. That's my encouragement for you today. Thank you all for being here so much. It was great to join you this morning.
There you go. All right. Thank you so much, Anita. Well, we've now reached the end of our webinar. So thank you all for attending today's webinar, and a survey along with the link for the presentation materials and recording will be located in tomorrow's follow-up email as well. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your workday.
Thanks, Jill.